Thank you very much, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay, but thank you very much for your attention and thank you for showing up this morning. My name is Caitriona Fottrell and I'm the chair of the ICTR, and on behalf of the board of ICTR, on behalf of Sheila Norden and Annalise Coughlin, we're delighted to welcome you here this morning to our conference. A couple of very brief housekeeping things. You'll see on the table there's a menu, and if you can just fill that out if you're staying for lunch, the hotel will collect that during the morning. And also just a reminder to turn your phones off or on silent. Thank you very much. Thank you especially to our sponsors this morning. We have two sponsors who've been with us for a long time, PwC and Mason Hayes and Curran, and we have a new sponsor this year in Ecclesiasticals, and we couldn't put on this conference without your very generous financial support. These three companies have also shown a real commitment to this sector and real leadership in the sector, so we're delighted they're here this morning and we're really grateful for their continuing support of ICTR. And finally, thanks to all of you. I know how busy everyone is in this sector. None of us have spare time, and it is really terrific to see these sorts of numbers gather for this morning's conference. I think the theme of the conference, embracing the new realities for charities, resonates with all of us. It's exactly a year since we gathered here and heard from Geraldine Kennedy, who spoke about the crisis of confidence that had affected so many pillars of society in Ireland. And she asked the question, were we ready for a similar crisis? And then we heard from Joe Saxton, who talked about CEOs' salaries and overheads and the sort of questions that we all needed to be prepared to answer on those questions. And I don't think we could have had a more prescient morning. When you think about it, 3 weeks later, we were hit with a pretty devastating crisis on a sector that was already dealing with 6 or 7 years of cutbacks, of increased demand on services, of decreasing fundraising. So the impact of that and the timing of that crisis was devastating, and we're still dealing with the outcomes of that. But when you peel away all the hype and the intensity and the questions and the panic around that time, what we're left with is the two fundamental issues of trust and transparency. And there's no avoiding either of those. And as Sheila Norden has said from this podium for many years, we have to be ready to answer the questions. And the public and the media and our donors are getting better at asking those questions and expect and demand answers from us. And as a sector, we have to embrace that. There should be no question that we're afraid of answering. If there are, we need to really examine that. So there's a lot of work for all of us to do within our own organisations, and there's no time lag on this now. We must be ready for this. But I think if we can move the conversation beyond the sort of knee-jerk overhead CEO compensation questions, we can move on to the real value of this sector and the impact that organisations working have on Irish society and on lives in Ireland. And I think we have a phenomenal story to tell. Wearing my day job hat in the Ireland Funds, we would look at information from 300 or 400 organisations a year. And the information that comes to us is in all sorts of shapes and forms, and it's a real challenge often getting down to the nitty-gritties of what an organisation does or how they spend their money. But we would rarely see a story that isn't impressive, that isn't inspirational, that isn't really delivering impact. And so it's up to all of us to figure out how to tell that story properly. We shouldn't be afraid of it. There's been some real progress in the last 12 months since we gathered here. We have the establishment of the CRA, of the Charities Regulatory Authority, and we're delighted that we have the CEO of that, and she's going to address us later on. Una, you're very welcome this morning, and your team. And that takes care of the sort of regulatory compliance that we're all going to have to address. But there's also the willing compliance, and that's in the area of adoption of SORP, of the codes of fundraising, of the codes of governance. And we would really encourage all organisations, all members of ICTR and beyond, to take a close look and adopt all three of those. There's no excuses for not doing it. Sheila's been at us for years and years to do it, and again, the time is now. So this is the new reality that we have to embrace. I think, honestly, the opportunities are phenomenal, but I think it's really interesting to have this morning, to have the lineup of speakers that we have who have dealt with some of these issues and who are also helping us to deal with some of these issues. And hopefully we will all learn a lot from our speakers. Our first speaker this morning is Minister Frances Fitzgerald, who's the Minister for Equality and Justice and who's the Minister responsible for bringing in the CRA, and we're deeply grateful to her for that. Her previous role was as Minister for Children, first Senior Minister for Children and Youth Affairs, and before becoming a TD, she was Chair of the Women's Council in Ireland. So she has a unique understanding of the issues of inequality and difficulties that so many of the organisations that are in this room deal with. So we're really grateful to her for taking time out of an incredibly busy schedule to come and talk to us this morning. Thank you.